quedarte sin trabajo, verte solo, te vienes abajo, te entra depresión también, no tienes ganas de nada y te metes en el mismo mundo y ahí todos los días.
Somos seres humanos. Merecemos tener un techo.
The voices there of two people who were once chronically homeless. They, like hundreds of thousands of people, know what it's like to live on Europe's streets, a problem that shows no signs of easing due to the ongoing cost of living crisis. So in this episode, we're asking whether we should be adopting a more radical approach when it comes to tackling homelessness. Rather than make housing the ultimate reward, should we instead be simply getting people off the streets and giving them a home as soon as they need one? Welcome to Realeconomy. It's estimated nearly 900,000 people sleep rough across the EU on any given night. That number is comparable to the population of a city like Marseille or Turin. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. Many more hidden homeless are thought to live in temporary accommodation. In a moment, we'll see how an innovative approach here in Madrid is helping homeless people transform their lives. But before all that, here's our crash course. More and more people in Europe have nowhere safe to call home. Evidence suggests homelessness across the EU as a whole has more than doubled since 2009, with only Denmark and Finland making progress. Its most visible form is rough sleeping, but the profile of Europe's homeless is evolving. In addition to those affected by economic hardship or physical and mental health issues, women escaping domestic violence and young people with no proper access to housing, so-called couch surfers, also make up the numbers. The lack of affordable and good quality housing plays a major part in all of this. In 2022, almost 1 in 10 people in the EU spent more than 40% of their income on accommodation. Despite being enshrined in the European Pillar of Social Rights as a fundamental human right, many people still struggle to put a roof over their heads. According to national data, homelessness in Spain has increased by 25% over the last decade. Such statistics have prompted a rethink on how to tackle this extreme form of social exclusion. The solution proposed is surprisingly simple: give every person living on the street a home. After his marriage fell apart, Carlos lived rough for several years.
Hola.
Carlos, hola. Encantado.
Encantado también.
Today, he has his own flat on the outskirts of Madrid thanks to that very same approach known as Housing First.
A mí la vida me la ha cambiado el piso en todo, en la tranquilidad, en las carencias que se tiene cuando uno está en la calle, y puedes cocinar, no te tienes que buscar la vida para lavar la ropa, no puedes lavar la ropa y bueno, y estar con una tranquilidad de un techo. Yo muy contento hoy en día.
Unlike traditional approaches, Housing First doesn't require someone to meet certain criteria, such as sobering up or getting off drugs before receiving housing assistance. The idea is that they are more likely to get their lives back on track if they have a home. Housing is therefore seen as a right and not as a reward.
Este sistema es mucho mejor. El albergue te exige unas ciertas normas, lógicamente, y aquí en una casa puedes hacer más o menos lo que quieras. Pero yo aquí estoy muy a gusto y llevo una vida más o menos normal.
Like Carlos, Rita lived on the street and in shelters for several years. But 4.5 years ago, her life was transformed after she got her own flat.
Las cosas que hoy puedo hacer es ser libre. Amar, salir de la calle, que todas las personas me respeten. Soy como una mariposa.
Rita and Carlos's rent is ultimately paid for by the local authority. Despite that public cost, those pushing for Housing First to be scaled up across Europe insist the model is often more cost-effective over the long term than the shelter-based system.
Housing First is a model that has been proven successful already across Europe in many pilot projects, but it's not even near the tipping point. Housing First holds the potential to make a paradigm shift from managing homelessness to actually ending it.
Two non-profit organisations, Provivienda and Hogar C, co-manage several Housing First initiatives in Spain, including the one in Madrid. The project, which to date enjoys 100% occupancy and retention rate, was financed by Madrid's municipality through the European Social Fund.
Los fondos europeos se están empleando principalmente para poner en marcha iniciativas innovadoras, soluciones innovadoras al problema del sinhogarismo, y también se están empleando para incrementar el parque de vivienda social y asequible. Dos soluciones fundamentales para reducir el sinhogarismo en España.
All EU countries have committed to spend at least 25% of their ESF Plus resources on tackling social inclusion and at least 3% on addressing material deprivation. The European Platform on Combating Homelessness also seeks to bring about change. But faced with housing markets that don't produce enough affordable homes, a cost of living crisis and increased migration flows, what can the EU really do? I put that question to the platform's co-chair, former Belgian Prime Minister Yves Le Terme.
The challenge has to be addressed at the local level, municipal level. But I think when Europe wants to have also a social dimension, we should include issues like this one. We want to agree on how do we monitor developments to be able to address the issue in a very good way. We want to have an exchange, a platform of exchange of best practices and mutual learning at European level. And last but not least, at a moment where Europe is putting hundreds of billions of euros on the table to reboost the economy, we think that a tiny little bit of that money should also be used to address this extreme exclusion, to make our societies more inclusive.
But can Europe, at a more broader level, create change?
I think so. By bringing together member states and agreeing on what kind of policy tools do we need to use based on experiences, because some member states have been very successful in addressing the issue actually, and others are lagging behind. So bringing together the member states around this good practices, best practices and experiences to address that issue.
And finally, do you sense that there's the political will to tackle this issue head on?
Indeed, I think in this there is a kind of momentum that has been also created by the European Commission. Lots of things are done in very diverse way at the local, municipal, provincial, regional, national level. But let's now join forces and let's really make this something of the past. We are far away from that ideal situation, but we are making progress. And I'm sure that we can make a difference in the midterm. Yeah.
Mr. Le Terme, thank you.
Please, thank you very much.
Progress in the current economic context won't be easy, but evidence shows with the right policies it is possible.